let's jump right in. For years, when we talked about climate action, it was pretty much all about one thing: get into a net zero future as fast as humanly possible. But right now, that whole global game plan is at a huge turning point. We're seeing a massive rethink, a great recalibration, if you will. It's a challenging thought, right? But it's the question at the very heart of this new conversation. What happens when the rush to solve a problem, in this case, getting off carbon, starts to create its own set of brand new, really complex issues? And this really lays out the tension perfectly. On one hand, you've got the incredible promise, a future powered by clean, endless energy for everybody. But on the other hand, you have the reality that's starting to bite, especially in Europe, the folks leading the charge: grid failures, instability, and just a whole lot of stress on the system.
And look, these aren't just hypotheticals anymore. This is real stuff happening right now. In the Netherlands, a leader in renewables, the grid is so jammed up, they're literally asking people to use less power at night. And get this, in Spain, a huge surge of renewable power actually caused widespread disruptions across the grid. Now, this isn't a knock on renewables at all. It's a huge warning sign that the underlying infrastructure, well, it's just not keeping up.
So this brings us to our first big idea here: a new climate realism. The global conversation is shifting. We're moving away from just pure ambition, setting these big, lofty targets, to the messy, nitty-gritty details of operational reality. The how is suddenly becoming just as important as the what. So what's causing all this fragility? Well, there's this fascinating concept to explain it called the entropy effect. Basically, if you keep adding intermittent energy sources like wind and solar to a grid faster than you add the necessary backup, things like batteries and stronger power lines, you don't actually make the system stronger. You can make it way more volatile and fragile. And you can see how this creates this domino effect, this chain reaction. You rush renewables online, but the grid upgrades and storage just can't keep pace. Then the whole system gets wobbly, more prone to breaking down, and the result? Both the cost of energy and the risk of blackouts start to climb. And this quote just nails it. The crucial point is this: for a transition to actually last, you have to design the whole thing properly from the start. Things like the order you do things in and having buffers in place, they aren't afterthoughts. They have to be part of the core plan from day one. And this lesson is being learned the hard way, in real time. Policymakers are now way more focused on the engineering, the financial planning, and the nitty-gritty institutional challenges of this whole thing. The era of just talking about ambition is giving way to an era of hardcore pragmatism. Now, this new realism is leading to some really different models. So let's turn our attention to India's resilient blueprint, which is built on this really powerful idea that development itself is a form of climate adaptation. First, let's get some crucial context here. The average person in India is responsible for less than half the greenhouse gas emissions of the average person globally. But, and this is a huge but, the country is incredibly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. And that unique position they're in, it shapes their entire strategy. The core philosophy is that for India, climate action isn't some separate thing from its development goals. They're one and the same. Making societies stronger through better healthcare, more resilient infrastructure, and access to affordable energy is seen as the absolute best way to withstand climate shocks. And this whole philosophy is organized into a really clear three-pillar strategy. First, you've got adaptation, protecting people and infrastructure right here, right now. Second is mitigation, taking a balanced, pragmatic approach to low-carbon energy that doesn't sacrifice security. And third, finance, figuring out how to mobilize the capital to pay for the whole shebang. Okay, so what does this actually look like on the ground? Let's dive into our final section, pragmatism in action. We're going to see how this big national blueprint gets translated into real, local solutions across those three pillars. First up, adaptation. What's so striking here is the focus on community-led projects. We're talking often low-tech but super high-impact ideas that build resilience from the ground up. So take Ahmedabad. They've launched this heat insurance program, and what's so clever about it is the direct economic link. When the temperature crosses a dangerous line, women who work outdoors automatically get a payout for the wages they've lost. It directly treats a heat wave as an economic shock. Or look at this example from Uttarakhand. A local community-run radio station has become this essential hub for disaster preparedness. It broadcasts early warnings for meteorologists, getting life-saving info directly to the people who are most at risk. And in Jodhpur, you see urban resilience in action. They've built these net zero community cooling stations that use smart, passive design, like wind towers and misting fans, and they're powered by solar. It creates a cool, safe place for outdoor workers during those brutal heat waves. Simple, effective, and you could build them anywhere. All right, let's move to that second pillar, mitigation. The key word here is balanced. India's whole approach is about having a diverse mix of energy sources to make sure security and affordability are never, ever compromised.
The country's power capacity really tells the story. Of course, there's a massive and growing share for renewables, but you also see a huge role for fossil fuels, hydro, and nuclear, all of which provide that steady, reliable power you need to avoid the kind of grid stress we saw in Europe.
And they are thinking way down the road. India is not just betting on solar. A huge piece of legislation, the Shanti Act, is opening up the nuclear sector to private investment with this incredibly ambitious goal of 100 gigawatts of nuclear power by 2047. This is a massive strategic move to lock in a stable, low-carbon energy source for the long term. Finally, we come to the third and maybe the most critical pillar of them all, finance. How do you pay for this colossal transition? Well, India's strategy is to use its own domestic resources as much as it can, while also being very loud and clear about the shortfalls in the global system. And the problem is just stark. Of the $1.3 trillion in private climate finance last year, over 80% of it went to advanced economies and China. The rest of the developing world, they got about 15%. There is a gigantic mismatch between where the money is and where the investment is needed most. And this really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? For the global climate transition to actually work, it has to be affordable for everyone. Because an unaffordable transition, well, it's not going to be fast, and it's definitely not going to be just. Which brings us to our final question. As we watch this great recalibration, this shift from pure ambition to pragmatic reality, you have to ask, is the future of climate action not just about reducing emissions, but about building holistic resilience? Perhaps the goal isn't just a cleaner world, but a more durable one. Something to think about.